Lisa Martinez stepped off the transport ship and looked up at the massive building in front of her. The Galactic Defense Academy stretched across the horizon like a metal mountain. Its silver walls gleamed under the light of 3 different suns. She had dreamed of this moment for years, but now that she was here, her stomach felt tight with worry. The Academy sat on Kepler 7b, a moon that belonged to no one. It was neutral ground where 12 different alien species came to learn warfare together. Lisa was one of only 3 humans accepted this year. For decades, the galactic community had called humans primitive. They said Earth's people were too young and weak to fight alongside the great star empires. But finally, humanity had earned a chance to prove itself. Lisa picked up her bags and walked toward the entrance. Around her, alien cadets moved in groups. She saw the tall, graceful Centaurians with their 4 arms and silver skin. The stocky Corvins rolled past on their mechanical legs. And everywhere she looked, she saw Altarians. The Altarians were the most powerful species in the galaxy. They had blue scales that shimmered like metal and muscles that could crush steel. They walked with their heads high, looking down at everyone else. Most of the Academy's top positions were held by Altarians. They had been conquering star systems for thousands of years while humans were still learning to make fire. As Lisa entered the main hall, she heard a deep voice behind her. Look what crawled out of the Sol system. She turned to see a group of Altarian cadets watching her. Their leader was tall even for his species, with dark blue scales and yellow eyes that seemed to glow. The name tag on his uniform read Zarthek. He looked at Lisa the way someone might look at an insect. I heard they finally let the humans in, Zarthek said to his friends. I wonder how long they will last before they run home crying. The other Altarians laughed. Lisa felt her face grow hot, but she said nothing. She had been warned that some aliens would not welcome humans. Her father, a general in Earth's Solar Defense Corps, had told her to prove herself through actions, not words. Lisa found her room assignment and went to unpack. Her roommate was already there, a small, furry creature with 6 eyes. The alien looked up from her desk and smiled. You must be the human, she said in accented English. I am Kiva from the Zelthian Republic. I have heard much about your species, Lisa smiled back. At least someone seemed friendly. Nice to meet you, Kiva. I hope what you heard was good. Mostly, Kiva said, tilting her head. Though some say humans are too emotional for military work. Too soft. The next morning classes began. Lisa sat in strategic warfare theory and listened to Professor Hal Moore, a Centaurian with 4 arms and ancient scars across his silver face. He spoke about the great battles of galactic history, where Altarian fleets had crushed enemy forces through superior strength and firepower. Victory belongs to those with the strongest ships and the bravest warriors, Professor Halmore said. This is the way of war among civilized species. Lisa raised her hand. What about strategy? Using intelligence to overcome superior forces. The professor's 4 eyes focused on her. Ah, the human speaks. Yes, tactics have their place. But when facing a stronger enemy, the wise choice is to retreat or surrender. Only fools try to fight battles they cannot win. Behind her, Lisa heard Zarthek whisper to his friends. Typical human thinking. They believe they can think their way out of any problem. After theory class came combat simulation. This was where Lisa's problems really began. The Academy's training systems were designed for alien bodies. The controls were too big for human hands. The armor was shaped wrong for human limbs. The weapons were too heavy for human muscles. Lisa struggled to keep up as her training squad moved through a virtual battlefield. She was slow to react, clumsy with the equipment. When the simulation ended, her squad had failed their mission completely. Zarthek was waiting as she climbed out of the simulator pod. That was painful to watch, he said loudly enough for everyone to hear. How did your species survive long enough to reach the stars? You move like an injured animal. Give me time to adjust to the equipment, Lisa said, trying to stay calm. Time? Zarthek laughed. In real battle, the enemy will not wait for you to figure out your weapons. You are weak, human. Your soft skin, your small muscles, your slow reflexes. They prove that humans do not belong here. Other cadets gathered to watch. Lisa saw a few other humans. Jake Foster from Mars Colony and Amy Collins from Europa Station. They looked embarrassed and worried. This was exactly what Earth's military leaders had feared would happen. Maybe you should go back to your little planet, Zarthek continued. Leave warfare to species who understand it. Lisa felt anger building in her chest, but she remembered her father's advice. I will prove myself through my performance, she said quietly. What performance? Zarthek's scales seemed to darken with amusement. You cannot even hold your weapon properly. You think too much and move too slowly. In my culture, we have a saying. The enemy strikes while the coward plans. That is what humans do. You plan while others act. Commander Veltar, the Academy's Centaurian commandant, watched the exchange from across the training room. He had 4 arms crossed over his chest and a thoughtful expression on his silver face, but he did not interfere. The Academy's philosophy was that cadets must earn respect through their own efforts. That night, Lisa sat in her room feeling lower than she had ever felt in her life. She had graduated at the top of her class from Earth's Naval Academy. She had scored perfect marks on every entrance exam. But here, surrounded by species that had been fighting Star Wars for millennia, she felt like a child trying to play with adults. Kiva noticed her mood. The Altarian was cruel to you today, she said gently. Maybe he was right, Lisa replied. Maybe humans are not ready for this. I do not think so, Kiva said. My species has studied many others. We have learned that strength comes in different forms. The Altarians are powerful, but they always fight the same way. They never change. Perhaps that is not always the best approach. Lisa looked up with interest. What do you mean? In my world's history, we have stories of small creatures defeating large predators through cleverness. The predators were stronger, but they were also predictable. The small ones survived by being different. Lisa thought about this as she lay in bed that night. Maybe Kiva was right. Maybe being different was not the same as being weak. But first she had to figure out how to turn being different into an advantage. She had to find a way to make her human thinking into a weapon that even the mighty Altarians would respect. The next morning, she began to form a plan. Lisa spent every free moment in the Academy's vast library. While other cadets relaxed or trained their bodies, she buried herself in military history from dozens of different worlds. She read about Altarian conquests, Centaurian defensive strategies, and Corvan siege tactics. But most importantly, she studied the few times these great military powers had been defeated. The patterns she found surprised her. Every galactic species fought in predictable ways. The Altarians always used overwhelming force and direct attacks. The Centaurians preferred defensive positions and careful planning. The Corvans relied on superior technology and precise strikes. Each species had developed their own style over thousands of years, and they never changed it. They are like machines. Lisa muttered to herself as she read about another battle where Altarian forces had smashed through enemy lines using the same tactics they had used for centuries. But Lisa also found something else in the historical records. The few defeats suffered by these great powers had come when they faced enemies who fought in completely unexpected ways. Small, desperate forces that broke all the rules of civilized warfare. Forces that used tactics so strange that the traditional military minds could not adapt fast enough. Jake Foster found Lisa in the library late one night, surrounded by data tablets and holographic battle displays. You have been here for hours, he said, sitting down beside her. What are you working on? Learning, Lisa replied. Did you know that Altarian battle doctrine has not changed in over 300 years? Jake looked at the battle displays floating around them. Makes sense. Why change something that works? Because everything works until it does not, Lisa said. She pulled up a historical battle where a small human force had defeated a much larger enemy on Earth. Look at this. During Earth's Second World War, a tiny group of resistance fighters held off an entire army division for weeks. They used tactics that the regular army had never seen before. That was different, Jake said. Those were desperate people fighting for their homes. This is a military academy. Is it so different? Lisa asked. We are the underdogs here. Everyone expects us to fail. Maybe we should use that to our advantage. Amy Collins joined them a few minutes later. She had been struggling in combat training even more than Lisa. I overheard Zarthek today, she said quietly. He told his friends that humans will wash out within a month. He said we think too much and act too little. Let him think that, Lisa said. While he's busy being proud, we can be busy getting better. For the next 2 weeks, Lisa worked with Jake and Amy to develop new approaches to the Academy's training scenarios. Instead of trying to match alien strength, they focused on speed and unpredictability. Instead of following standard tactics, They created their own methods based on human military history that no alien had ever studied. The opportunity to test their ideas came sooner than expected. Commander Veltar announced a major joint exercise. All cadets would be divided into teams and given different scenarios to complete. The exercise was designed to test leadership, tactical thinking, and adaptability under pressure. Lisa watched as Zarthek was assigned to lead the Alpha team, composed of the Academy's top-performing Altarian and Centaurian cadets. Their mission was to assault and capture a heavily defended space station. It was the kind of scenario where Altarian tactics would shine, a direct confrontation where superior firepower would decide the outcome. Team Alpha will demonstrate proper military doctrine, Professor Halmore announced. They represent the finest traditions of galactic warfare. When it was Alpha Team's turn to run their simulation, Lisa watched carefully from the observation deck. Zarthek's strategy was textbook perfect. He divided his force into 3 groups, used his heavy weapons to suppress the defenders, and then sent his assault troops to capture key positions. The exercise was over in less than an hour. The defending force never had a chance. "Excellent work," Commander Veltar said as the simulation ended. "A classic example of overwhelming force properly applied." Zarthek looked pleased with himself. "This is how real warriors fight," he said loud enough for everyone to hear. With strength, courage, and proven tactics. Then Lisa's team assignment was announced. She was given command of Beta Team, a mixed group of cadets from smaller, less military species. Her team included 2 Zelthians like her roommate Kiva, a methodical Corvan named Brix, Jake Foster, Amy Collins, and 3 other cadets from species that were not known for their fighting abilities. Team Beta will defend Mining Station Omega-7 against a superior attacking force, Professor Halmore announced. The tone of his voice made it clear that this was not expected to be as impressive as Alpha Team's performance. Lisa studied the scenario parameters carefully. The station was surrounded by asteroid fields that made long-range attacks difficult. The defensive force was outnumbered 3-1. The attacking force had better weapons and more experienced troops. According to every rule of galactic warfare, the scenario was hopeless. The exercise is designed to test how gracefully you can manage defeat, Professor Halmore explained to Lisa's team privately. "No one expects you to actually win. The goal is to show proper military bearing while facing impossible odds." Lisa nodded politely, but inside her mind was racing. She had spent weeks studying scenarios exactly like this one, small forces defending against overwhelming odds. History was full of such battles, and sometimes the small force found a way to win. That night, Lisa gathered her team in a private meeting room. "I want everyone to forget everything you have learned about proper military tactics," she said. The Corvan Brix raised one of his mechanical arms. "That seems unwise. Proper tactics exist because they work." "They work when both sides follow the same rules," Lisa replied. "But what happens when one side breaks all the rules?" She showed them historical examples from Earth's military past. Small groups using hit-and-run tactics, guerrilla fighters turning their environment into a weapon, desperate defenders who won by doing things their enemies never expected. "The simulation assumes we will fight like everyone else fights," Lisa explained. "Set up defensive positions, exchange fire, retreat in good order when overwhelmed. But what if we do not fight that way at all?" Kiva, one of the Zelthians, tilted her furry head. "What do you mean? What if we abandon the station completely?" Lisa asked. Her team stared at her in shock. Amy Collins spoke first. "Lisa, the mission is to defend the station." "No," Lisa said with a growing smile. "The mission is to stop the attacking force from achieving their objectives. That is not the same thing as sitting in the station waiting for them to capture us." Jake Foster began to understand. "You want to draw them in and then attack from outside." "Better than that," Lisa said. "I want to make them think they have won easily, and then show them they have walked into a trap." She spent the rest of the night explaining her plan. It was unlike anything taught in any galactic military academy. It combined tactics from human history with the unique abilities of each team member. The Zelthians would handle psychological warfare, something their peaceful species understood better than anyone realized. The Corvan would jury-rig equipment in ways that violated every safety protocol. The humans would coordinate everything and adapt as needed. When the other cadets heard about Beta Team's mission, the reaction was predictable. "They will be massacred," one Altarian said. "At least it will be quick," another added. Zarthek was even more direct. "This is what happens when you put a human in command," he announced to anyone who would listen. "They will overthink the problem, create some complicated plan, and then watch it fall apart when the real fighting starts. Mark my words, they will surrender within the first hour." Lisa heard all of this, but she did not respond. Let them think what they wanted. In 2 days, when the simulation began, her team would show the entire academy what human tactical thinking could accomplish. She just hoped her plan would work. The simulation began at dawn. Lisa's team took their positions inside Mining Station Omega-7, a complex structure built into a large asteroid. The station had multiple levels, mining equipment throughout, and life support systems that could be controlled from several different locations. In the observation room, professors and other cadets gathered to watch. Most expected the exercise to be over quickly. Lisa's team was facing a force 3 times their size, led by an experienced Altarian commander who had never lost a simulation. "How long do you think they will last?" one professor asked. 20 minutes, Zarthek answered confidently. "Maybe less if the human tries something foolish." The attacking force approached the station in perfect formation. Their commander, a senior Altarian cadet named Torvek, had studied the station's layout carefully. He planned a straightforward assault, surround the station, blast through the weak points, and overwhelm the defenders with superior numbers. But as his forces closed in, something unexpected happened. The station's defensive weapons fired only a few shots, then went silent. The external sensors detected the defending force retreating deeper into the station. "They are running already," Torvek announced to his troops. "This will be easier than expected." His forces landed on the station's exterior and began cutting through the outer doors. They met almost no resistance. Within 30 minutes, they had captured the main docking bay, the command center, and the power core. The few defenders they encountered retreated quickly after brief firefights. In the observation room, professors shook their heads. "The humans' team is not even trying to fight," Professor Halmore said with disappointment. "Typical," Zarthek added. "Humans talk about strategy, but when faced with real conflict, they run." But Commander Veltar was watching more carefully. Something about the retreat bothered him. It was too organized, too quick, and the defending team had abandoned several strong defensive positions without using them properly. Inside the station, Torvek's forces spread out to secure their conquest. They set up command posts in the captured areas and began establishing control over the station's systems. The Altarian commander was pleased with how easily everything had gone. "Resistance has collapsed," he reported. "The station is ours. The human commander has proven that her species is not ready for real warfare." But Lisa was not done. Her entire retreat had been planned. While Torvek's forces celebrated their easy victory, Lisa's team was putting the real plan into action. The mining station had been built over many years, with tunnels and service passages that did not appear on the standard maps. Lisa had studied these hidden areas carefully. Her team had spent their time before the battle hiding supplies and equipment throughout these secret passages. Now, while the attackers thought they controlled the station, Lisa's team was everywhere and nowhere at once. The first sign of trouble came when the station's mining equipment suddenly activated. Massive drilling machines that had been silent began tearing through walls where Torvek had placed his troops. The Altarian soldiers had to scramble to avoid being crushed by machinery that was supposed to be under their control. "What is happening?" Torvek demanded. His communications officer checked the systems. "The mining equipment is being controlled from multiple locations. We thought we had secured the main computer, but there seemed to be backup control stations we did not find." Before Torvek could respond, the station's environmental systems began acting strangely. The gravity fluctuated, causing Altarian soldiers to float helplessly in some areas while being crushed by increased gravity in others. The lighting failed in key locations, leaving the attackers stumbling in the dark while somehow the defenders seemed to know exactly where they were going. "This is impossible," Torvek said. "We control the main systems." But Lisa had learned something that no galactic military manual taught. Complex systems like mining stations had many ways to control them. While the attackers held the obvious control points, her team was using maintenance tunnels, emergency panels, and backup systems that most people did not even know existed. Jake Foster, using his engineering background, had figured out how to turn the mining chemicals into improvised explosives. Small blasts began going off throughout the station, not enough to cause real damage, but enough to keep the attacking force confused and nervous. Amy Collins had established a communication network using the station's mining sensors. Lisa's team could talk to each other and coordinate their movements while the attackers could not figure out where the commands were coming from. But the real genius was how Lisa used the Zelthians. Kiva and her teammate Velna began what they called fear tactics. The Zelthians were naturally empathic. They could sense emotions and project feelings into others. Working together, they began filling the station with a sense of unease and paranoia. Torvek's soldiers started seeing movement in shadows. They heard sounds that might or might not be enemies. They began firing at empty corridors and jumping at normal station noises. The psychological pressure was unlike anything they had trained for. "Sir, the troops are getting nervous," Torvek's lieutenant reported. "They say something feels wrong about this place." "It is just a mining station," Torvek snapped. "Get control of your soldiers." But even as he said it, Torvek felt it too. The station seemed alive somehow, hostile and threatening in ways that made no tactical sense. Then Lisa struck her masterstroke. Instead of trying to fight Torvek's superior forces directly, she had studied Altarian military doctrine carefully. Altarians were proud warriors who followed strict chains of command. They were trained to obey their officers without question and to never retreat from a fight. This strength was also their weakness. While Torvek was trying to figure out what was happening with his scattered forces, Lisa and Jake Foster made their way through the maintenance tunnels to the station's central command area. Not the command center that Torvek had captured. That was just for day-to-day operations. The real control room was hidden deep in the station's core, where the original designers had placed the emergency systems. Torvek was standing in what he thought was the most secure location on the station when Lisa's voice came over the communications system. "Commander Torvek, this is Lisa Martinez. You are surrounded. Surrender now and your forces will be treated with honor." Torvek laughed. "Surrounded? Human, you are outnumbered 3-1. I control this station." "Check your tactical display," Lisa said calmly. Torvek looked at his screens and his confidence wavered. The displays showed that his forces were scattered throughout the station, isolated in small groups. They were not in defensive positions. They were in locations where they could be trapped easily. Worse, the tactical computer was showing multiple enemy contacts moving through areas that were supposed to be secure. "This is impossible," he said. "My sensors show that you have more troops than you started with." "I have the same 8 soldiers I began with," Lisa replied. "But now they are fighting on ground they understand, using tactics you have never seen before. Your forces are not conquering a station. They are trapped in a maze controlled by people who know every secret passage and hidden system." To prove her point, Lisa activated a mining laser that cut off the route between Torvek's position and his largest group of soldiers. Then she began systematically isolating his forces, using the station's own equipment to block corridors and trap enemy soldiers in areas where they could not support each other. "How?" Torvek demanded. "You fought the battle you expected to fight," Lisa explained. "You came here to capture a station using superior force and standard tactics. But this is not that battle. This is something your training never prepared you for." In the observation room, the professors watched in stunned silence as the tactical displays showed Torvek's overwhelming force being taken apart piece by piece. The humans and their allies were not winning through strength. They were winning by making the battle into something completely different. Commander Veltar leaned forward in his chair. "Fascinating," he murmured. "She has turned the station itself into a weapon." Sarthek stared at the displays, unable to believe what he was seeing. "This cannot be happening," he said. "They are using mining equipment. They are hiding in maintenance tunnels. This is not proper warfare." "No," Commander Veltar agreed. "It is something else entirely." The simulation ended when Torvek formally surrendered. His superior force had been completely outmaneuvered by Lisa's team, and he found himself trapped in a section of the station with no way to reach his scattered soldiers. For the first time in Galactic Defense Academy history, a defending force had not only survived against 3-1 odds, they had won decisively. The observation room fell silent. Professors stared at the tactical displays, trying to understand what had just happened. Students who had been laughing at the human team an hour ago now watched with wide eyes as Lisa's forces secured the station and took their prisoners. Commander Veltar was the first to speak. "Bring me complete recordings of this exercise," he ordered his staff. "I want every move analyzed and documented." Professor Halmore looked confused. "Commander, surely there was some kind of malfunction in the simulation systems. This outcome is not possible according to standard military doctrine." "That," Commander Veltar said quietly, "is exactly the problem." In the post-exercise debriefing room, Lisa's team sat across from Torvik and his officers. The Altarian commander looked like he had been hit by a transport ship. He kept staring at Lisa as if she were some kind of alien creature he had never seen before. "I do not understand," Torvik said finally. "My forces controlled all the key positions. We had superior numbers and equipment. How did you defeat us?" Lisa looked at her teammates before answering. They were all exhausted but excited. Kaiva was practically glowing with pride, and Jake Foster had a huge grin on his face. "We changed the rules," Lisa said simply. "You cannot change the rules of warfare," Torvik protested. "Why not?" Lisa asked. "Who made those rules? Your species created military doctrine based on your strengths and your way of thinking. But what happens when you face someone who thinks differently?" She pulled up a holographic display showing the battle from beginning to end. "You plan to fight a standard siege. Surround the enemy, overwhelm their defenses, capture key positions. But we decided not to fight that battle at all." Amy Collins leaned forward. "Instead of trying to hold positions we could not defend, we made you think you had won quickly. Then we used the station itself as our weapon. The mining equipment, the environmental systems, the hidden passages," Jake added. "We turned everything you thought you controlled into a trap." Torvik shook his head. "But you used civilian equipment for military purposes. You hid instead of fighting honorably. You made my soldiers afraid with psychological tricks. This is not how civilized species conduct warfare." "No," Lisa agreed. "This is how desperate species survive when facing superior forces. My people have a long history of being outnumbered and outgunned. We learn to win by being unpredictable." Commander Veltar entered the room, followed by several senior faculty members. His 4 Centaurian arms were folded across his chest and his expression was thoughtful. "Cadet Martinez," he said formally, "your team's performance today was unprecedented." Lisa stood at attention. "Thank you, sir." "I did not say it was good," Commander Veltar continued. "I said it was unprecedented. You violated numerous protocols, ignored established tactical doctrine, and used equipment in ways it was never designed to be used." Lisa's heart sank. Had she gone too far? Had her desperate attempt to prove human worth actually gotten her expelled from the academy? "However," the commander continued, "you also achieved something that should have been impossible. You defeated a superior force using tactics that none of my instructors had ever seen before." He paused. "Tell me, where did you learn these methods?" "From human military history, sir," Lisa replied. "Earth has a long record of small forces defeating larger ones through unconventional tactics." "Show me," Commander Veltar ordered. For the next hour, Lisa presented examples from human warfare. She showed how ancient Earth generals had won battles through deception and surprise. She explained guerrilla tactics used by resistance fighters throughout human history. She demonstrated how human military thinking focused on adaptability rather than following rigid doctrines. The alien professors listened with growing amazement. Professor Halmore seemed particularly stunned. "These tactics," he said, "they are completely outside established galactic military theory." "That is the point," Lisa explained. "Every species in the galaxy fights the same basic way. You all learned from each other, so you all developed similar approaches to warfare, but humans learned in isolation. We developed different ideas because we had to fight each other instead of learning from galactic textbooks." Commander Veltar was quiet for a long time. Finally, he turned to his staff. "Contact the Defense Command headquarters. Tell them we need a full tactical review board here immediately." "Sir?" Professor Halmore asked. "If Cadet Martinez is correct, then our military doctrine has a critical weakness," the commander explained. "We have all become so similar in our thinking that we cannot handle truly different approaches to warfare. What happens when we encounter an enemy that fights like the humans did today?" Over the next few days, word of Lisa's victory spread throughout the academy. Other cadets began looking at the human students with new interest instead of mockery. Species that had previously ignored humans started asking questions about Earth's military history. Zarthek was the most affected. The proud Altarian had built his identity around being superior to other species, especially humans, but Lisa's victory had shaken his worldview. He found himself studying the battle recordings over and over, trying to understand how his people's greatest strength, their military tradition, had been turned against them. Finally, he approached Lisa in the Academy's cafeteria. She was sitting with her usual group, Jake, Amy, and Kiva, when the tall Altarian walked over to their table. "I owe you an apology," Zarthek said formally. The cafeteria grew quiet. Other students turned to watch. Altarians were not known for apologizing to anyone, especially not to humans. Lisa looked up at him. "You do not need to apologize for being surprised. I would have been surprised too." "No," Zarthek said. "I need to apologize for being arrogant and foolish. I mocked you for thinking too much, but you were thinking about things I had never considered. I called you weak, but you found strength in places I did not know existed." He sat down across from Lisa without being invited. "I have watched the simulation recordings dozens of times. Your tactics were brilliant. But more than that, they were creative in a way that I do not understand. How do you learn to think so differently?" Lisa considered the question carefully. "Maybe it is because humans had to," she said finally. "We spent thousands of years fighting each other on one small planet. We could not rely on being the strongest or having the best technology. We had to survive by being clever and adaptable." "Will you teach me?" Zarthek asked suddenly. Lisa blinked in surprise. "Teach you what?" "How to think like a human," Zarthek said. "My people have conquered many worlds using our traditional methods. But what happens when we face an enemy that thinks like you do? What happens when our strength becomes our weakness?" Around the cafeteria, other alien students were listening to this conversation with growing interest. Lisa realized that something important was happening. The Academy was not just a place where different species learned to fight together. It was a place where they could learn from each other. "I will teach you if you teach me," Lisa offered. "Show me how Altarian tactics work when they are used properly. Help me understand why your methods have been so successful for so long." Zarthek's scaled face showed something Lisa had never seen before. Respect. "Agreed," he said, extending his hand in the human gesture of greeting that he had previously mocked. As they shook hands, Lisa realized that her victory had accomplished something more important than just winning a simulation. She had opened a door between human and alien thinking that could change how the galaxy approached warfare forever. 3 months after Lisa's victory at the mining station, representatives from the Galactic Defense Command arrived at the Academy. They were not regular officers. They were the top strategic minds from every major species, including Grand Admiral Kethvar of the Altarian Fleet and Supreme Tactician Yilda of the Centaurian Defense Corps. Commander, Veltar had sent them detailed reports about Lisa's unconventional tactics, but they had come to see for themselves whether human methods could really challenge thousands of years of established military doctrine. Lisa found herself standing before a council of the galaxy's greatest military leaders, feeling very small and very human. But she was no longer the uncertain cadet who had arrived months ago. Her success had given her confidence, and her friendship with Zarthek had taught her that even the proudest species could learn and change. Cadet Martinez, Grand Admiral Kethvar began, his blue scales gleaming under the conference room lights. "We have reviewed your performance in the mining station exercise. Your tactics were unusual." "Yes, sir," Lisa replied. "They were also effective against forces using standard galactic military doctrine," Supreme Tactician Yilda added. "This concerns us. If a single human cadet can defeat experienced Altarian forces, what does that say about our preparedness for real threats?" Commander Veltar stepped forward. "With respect, I believe that is the wrong question. The right question is, what can human tactical thinking teach us that we have not learned in thousands of years of warfare?" Over the next week, Lisa worked with the Military Council to demonstrate human strategic concepts. She showed them historical battles where smaller forces had defeated larger ones through surprise, deception, and adaptability. She explained how human military thinking emphasized flexibility over rigid doctrine. But the real test came when the Council decided to run a series of war games. They wanted to see if Lisa's methods could work on a larger scale, against the best officers in the galactic military. The games were elaborate, involving multiple star systems and hundreds of simulated ships. Lisa was given command of a small mixed fleet representing a typical border defense force. Her opponents were veteran admirals with decades of experience commanding major fleets. The first game was against Grand Admiral Cadet himself. He commanded a massive Altarian battle fleet using classic hammer and anvil tactics. Overwhelming force applied with precise timing. It was the same approach that had conquered half the galaxy. Lisa's fleet was outnumbered 5-1. According to every military manual, she should have retreated or tried to delay the enemy until reinforcements could arrive. Instead, she did something no galactic admiral had ever attempted. She split her small fleet into tiny groups and scattered them across 3 star systems. When Cathavar's massive fleet arrived expecting a traditional battle, they found nothing but empty space and sensor ghosts. "Where is the enemy fleet?" Cathavar demanded. His sensors showed Lisa's ships everywhere and nowhere at once. Small groups of human vessels appeared at the edge of his formation, struck quickly, and then vanished before his heavier ships could respond. They hit supply lines, disrupted communications, and attacked isolated vessels. Most importantly, they made Cathavar's size advantage meaningless. His massive fleet could not bring its full power to bear against enemies that refused to stand and fight in a traditional battle. The war game lasted 3 days. In the end, Cathavar's numerically superior fleet was forced to withdraw, having lost nearly half their ships to an enemy they could never pin down long enough to destroy. "How?" the Grand Admiral asked afterward. "My fleet should have crushed yours in hours." "You expected me to fight the battle you wanted to fight," Lisa explained. "But I chose to fight a different battle entirely. Your ships are more powerful, but they are also slower and less flexible. I used that against you." The second war game was against Supreme Tactician Yilda, whose Centaurian forces specialized in defensive warfare. She had prepared a series of fortified positions that should have been impossible for Lisa's smaller force to overcome. Lisa studied the defensive positions carefully, then did something that shocked every observer. Instead of attacking the fortifications, she ignored them completely. "The enemy is bypassing our defensive lines," Yilda's officers reported. "That is impossible," Yilda replied. "Those positions control all the key shipping routes and resource centers." But Lisa had realized something that the Centaurian tactical manuals had missed. The defensive positions were perfectly placed to control trade and normal military movements. However, they were not positioned to stop an enemy that was willing to take risks and use unconventional routes. Lisa's fleet moved through asteroid fields, unstable regions of space, and areas that were considered too dangerous for normal operations. They struck at targets the Centaurians had never thought to defend because no sane military commander would risk their ships to attack such unimportant locations, except those unimportant locations turned out to be critical when viewed from a different perspective. Lisa's forces disrupted the communication networks that connected Yilda's fortresses. They destroyed maintenance facilities that kept the defensive systems operating. They captured supply convoys using routes that were not even on the tactical maps. Within a week, Yilda's impregnable defensive line had collapsed from within, never having fired a shot at the main enemy fleet. "You fought a completely different war than the one I prepared for," Yilda admitted afterward. "That is the point," Lisa replied. "If your enemy knows how you think, they can predict what you will do. But if you can think in ways they do not expect, you can win battles before they even realize they have started." The military council spent days analyzing the results of the war games. They brought in tactical experts from every species, trying to understand how human methods had defeated strategies that had worked for millennia. Finally, Grand Admiral Cadet made an announcement that would change the course of galactic military history. "The Defense Command has decided to integrate human tactical doctrine into our military curriculum," he said. "Cadet Martinez, you are being offered an immediate promotion to Lieutenant Commander and assignment to our Strategic Planning Division." Lisa felt a surge of pride, but she also felt something else: responsibility. "Sir, I would be honored to serve. But I think there is something more important we could do." "What do you mean?" the Grand Admiral asked. "Human tactics worked because they were unexpected," Lisa explained. "But they will not stay unexpected for long. Once everyone knows about them, They will become just another part of standard doctrine. The real lesson is not about specific tactics. It is about thinking differently. She gestured toward her fellow cadets, including Zarthek, who had become her closest ally and study partner. Instead of just teaching human methods, we should create an environment where different species can learn from each other's unique perspectives. Humans think differently because we developed in isolation, but every species has had different experiences that shaped their approach to problems. Supreme Tactician Yilda leaned forward with interest. You are suggesting that diversity of thought is itself a military advantage. Exactly, Lisa said. The strongest military is not the one with the most powerful weapons or the largest fleets. It is the one that can adapt and respond to any challenge because it has many different ways of thinking about problems. 6 months later, Lisa graduated from the Galactic Defense Academy with the highest honors in its history. But more importantly, she had helped establish the Academy's new Adaptive Strategy program, where cadets from different species worked together to develop innovative tactical approaches. Her first assignment was as commanding officer of the GSV Horizon, a new class of ship designed to test integrated multi-species crews. Her senior officers included Zarthek as tactical officer, Jake Foster as chief engineer, Amy Collins as communications specialist, and Kiva as psychological warfare consultant. As the Horizon departed the Academy for its first mission, Lisa stood on the bridge looking out at the stars. Her crew represented 8 different species, all working together in ways that had never been tried before. "Course laid in, Captain," reported her navigator, a young Corvan who had learned human navigation techniques. "Take us out," Lisa ordered. As the ship jumped to faster-than-light travel, Lisa reflected on how far she had come. Months ago, she had been a mocked cadet whom everyone expected to fail. Now she was making history as the first human to command a galactic defense vessel. But the real victory was not her personal success. It was the change she had helped bring to the galaxy itself. Military academies across dozens of worlds were now teaching courses in adaptive thinking and cross-species tactical integration. Young officers were learning that strength came not from following ancient traditions, but from being willing to learn new ways of solving problems. The mockery had ended. A new era of galactic warfare had begun, and somewhere in the depths of space, potential enemies would have to face a galaxy that no longer thought or fought in predictable ways. Lisa smiled as she watched the stars streak past. Her counterattack had done more than defend human honor. It had changed the very nature of how civilized species approached conflict. The small, mocked human